Africa. That is our objective. That's what we're fighting for. And that's what we will achieve, right? That's where we're going. So along with that, our work to achieve Pan-Africanism is outlined correctly in Kwame Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. And that book outlines the strategy that we are employing to achieve Pan-Africanism. And our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week by APRP organizers and father-daughter, biological father-daughter, Ajamu, myself, and Shakura. And before I hand it over to Shakura, I just wanted to mention we are continuing to raise money for one of our projects on the ground in Africa, Burkina Books in Burkina Faso, by our AAPRP organizers on the ground in Africa. And you'll have the URL on each of these slides, and you can become a sponsor. And it's gone really slow. It's gone a lot slower than our previous efforts to raise money for the struggle. So I don't know exactly why that is, but for today, what you'll see on the slides is you have that opportunity to contribute as a sponsor, but then we also put the betterworld.me up again, where if you just want to donate and it not be, you don't have to be revealed that you're donating, because that's worked very well in the past. Then after talking to the organizers in Burkina Faso this week, that can be done. So go ahead and donate. Still trying to get their exact Venmo, and we'll start putting that up. But until then, if you donate to betterworld.me, we will absolutely make sure that 100% of what you donate goes directly to them. So with that, and no further ado, to get us started on this topic of hands off Africa, the uprisings in the Sahel region, I'll turn it over to Shakura.
Thank you, kind sir. Appreciate that. Greetings, everyone. Yes, 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 yes. I am super, super humbled and excited to be here. I think that, we are feeling the heartbeat around the world. Our people are fighting back. We are in solidarity with Palestinian people. We have Haiti folks that are fighting back. We have folks in other parts of the world that are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they are on the verge of taking back what is rightfully theirs. And the momentum, it feels good. It feels like there's a pulse. It feels like people are definitely letting everyone else know that they are not going to be silenced and that they refuse to take the brutality and the mistreatment any further. And to just be able to say that I can say that I was alive and practicing in an organization, organizing in an organization, and with a work study process during a time where things were changing and colonized poor people were being able to demand a better way for themselves because they were taking back their land and taking back their power. That's so humbling and also very exciting and empowering. And I hope that you all feel that too. I feel that when I think about our indigenous comrades, especially this time of year, how people are so ignorant to what is being going on. And so I try to find every moment that I can. And I give thanks to the All African People's Revolutionary Party for instilling that in me, that we should continue to acknowledge that this is the indigenous people's land as much as possible, continue to make people uncomfortable, continue to use terms like unthanksgiving, and continue to use terms like thanks-taking, really practicing what that means. Because if you change your brain cells to think about the word unthanksgiving or thanks-taking, then that's going to force you to start to resist the systems that have been pushing down your throat, that you should just celebrate it like every other quote unquote good American, when in actuality, you know that there's something wrong with celebrating it. And so by you using different terminology or different languages, first and foremost, you're uncentering colonization. And second, you're allowing other people to have a way in where they can say, oh, what did I hear you say, unthanksgiving? And then it becomes a conversation, because we need to help more people understand that they too should be saying on Thanksgiving, and they too should be acknowledging the indigenous people. They too should be acknowledging occupied Palestine. They too should always be acknowledging occupied Palestine, not just because Hamas has made the news, but because these people have been fighting for years to get their land back. And so we can think more about how imperialism and colonization, and even neo-colonialism, how all of those things have impacted our comrades in the Sahel region. And we can just go back to over 500 years. So for over 500 years, you all, Europe and the US and the entire capitalist world have used Africa as its personal ATM card. Imagine having an ATM card where you could take out as much money as you desired, whenever you desired, without you having to make any deposits at any time. So this is a card that you can withdraw as much money as you want, whenever you want, but you never have to put money back into that account. This example defines the relationship of Africa to the colonizing capitalists and entities in the world. This entire situation is summed up by a t-shirt that my dad usually wears that says, quote, slave labor made America rich, end quote. The only thing to add there is that Europe and the rest of the capitalist world to that statement. So it's slave labor that made America, Europe, and all of the capitalist world rich as can be. As this slide indicates, a prime example of this exploitation is that one out of every 3 homes in France, including this Eiffel Tower, are powered by electricity generated from uranium that is stolen from Niger. While this happens, the people of Niger have absolutely no security as it relates to access to electricity. So we've talked about some really heavy things today, and we're going to get even more heavier, but I just want to reiterate, Africa has been exploited and basically had resources and money removed from it without ever having any of those resources or money put back into it. That's the first piece that was stated. And then we also need to talk about how, because of the exploitation, but also because of all the Africans who were enslaved, that particular process of slave labor endorsed financially, emotionally, physically, America, Europe, and all of the capitalist world to where they had entities because of slave labor and because slave labor was profitable. And then the last thing that we should think about is just how important the resources that come from Africa are. This is why it's so important to know who you are. And in knowing who you are, that means knowing where you come from. And I don't mean USA. I mean understanding that you have African blood running through your veins. If you are African, that means understanding just how rich the continent is that you descend from. You know, if you allow capitalism too much power, they will make you feel ashamed that you come from there. The objective of making you feel ashamed is to make sure that you will never, ever become intelligent and understanding how rich the continent is. Because if you understand how rich the continent is, then you might start to resist and fight back like all the other Africans around the world because you're tired of somebody taking something from you that does not belong to them. So instead, capitalist media, instead, imperialist media, they work overtime and they work so hard to make sure that you have no access to knowledge whatsoever so that you can even begin to understand just how many resources come. I mean, we just talked about a statistic of 1 in every 3 homes. 1 in every 3 homes in France is powered, including the Eiffel Tower, by the way, we see it lit up, is powered by electricity that comes from Niger, which is a country in Africa. Do you think the people in Niger have those same electrical resources? Absolutely not. Because for years on, 500 plus to be exact, for years on, Africans have been dehumanized and mistreated and not been able to benefit from the very same resources that are grown in their backyard. or that are developed in their backyard, or that are distributed, or that are manufactured in their backyard. They have never been able to benefit from these things. And this is why we've been fighting back. This is why we've been trying to eradicate neo-colonialism. This is why we've been trying to take back control of the resources and the land. Because if we had control of the land, no one would be able to come to Niger and take their electrical sources. No one would be able to come because we would have systems in place as Africans where we would be able to determine who gets to come in, and we would be able to determine who we're selling our resources to. None of that has been established. So because of that, the country has been stripped and socio and methodologically raped, if you will, in terms of exploitations of resources. And so we still have a long way to go in terms of understanding just how much of an impact that has had on folks, because this is not a new deal. This is something that has been going on since the beginning of time. Next slide, please. We can also think about how the CFA franc is the currency introduced by French President Charles de Gaulle in 1945. His intention was to ensure that the French colonies in Africa were controlled by France's economy. After the African independence movement of the 50s and 60s, France placed Benin, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, or also known as the Ivory Coast, Guinea-Bissau, Mali, and Niger inside one French-controlled African bank, and Guinea, Chad, and the Congo in another bank formation. These two bank zones were organized by France to represent almost about 11% of Africa's total gross domestic product that France controlled, while the CFA franc could not even be converted between any of these countries. In other words, the setup was only beneficial to France and not controllable by either of the 9 countries using the CFA franc. So again, we can think about Charles de Gaulle and the intention that they put in with investing in the French colonies in Africa, and the decision to make sure that Benin, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea-Bissau, Mali, and Niger were inside of one French-controlled African bank, while Guinea, Chad, and the Congo were in another. That was not by mistake, you all. Meanwhile, all of these countries, all 9 of these countries are using this CFA franc, but none of them are benefiting from the investments, from the interest, from any of the positive outcomes of having banks on African soil. Just like we just talked about Niger not benefiting from the same resource that it produces, so therefore people in Niger are still not having the same consistency of electricity that the people in France have. And so we can think more about that and understand that, or not just France and Europe, I'll say. So we can think more about that and see how each of these countries is producing a resource that could be very much beneficial in Europe or other parts of the world where capitalism and imperialism are ruling. Meanwhile, the same 9 countries that I mentioned, none of the people in those countries are seeing any of the benefits of the resources that are being produced. They're not seeing any of the benefits of banks being on African soil. They're not seeing any of the benefits of French banks being on African soil. And they're certainly not benefiting in terms of seeing any of the output or outcomes, I should say, of the gross domestic product. And so we can think just more about how this is still just another ploy for capitalism to maintain its objective, which is to protect private entities and making as much profit as possible, and to neutralize and eradicate any threats that come in the way of that process being mandated and that process being maintained. And so this is just another example of why it's important to know who you are. This is also an example of understanding why it's important to join an organization that is working for justice. Because at the end of the day, this particular seminar is going to impact all of us in more ways than one. Because if you're really wondering, well, why can't, the world just change, and why can't, people just stop experiencing systems of oppression? Well, you have to address the problem head on. And I literally mean that, pun intended, where it starts at the roots of Africa. That's where it starts. It doesn't start in Canada, where police brutality is happening. It doesn't start in Miami, where police brutality is happening. It doesn't even start in Australia, where police brutality is happening. It starts on the continent, because that's where everything has been based. That's where we understand how Africans have been treated for many, many years to come, and how they will continue to be treated. Again, if you're not respecting the land, then why would you respect the people who descend from the land? If you're not respecting the resources that come from the land, then why would you respect the people who are helping to produce those resources? Why would you value them? Why would you see them as deserving of anything except for mistreatment and disrespect and sexism and human dehumanism? Why would you see them as any reason to treat them as such other than that? But if they start to rise up like their comrades in Haiti are doing, and if they start to rise up like other comrades around the continent are doing, and if they start to rise up in other parts of the diaspora, then you're going to have to take them seriously, because they're fed up. And that's the beauty in organizing. We know that more change can take place if we organize together, which is yet another reason to join an organization that is working for justice. Because we can't fight them, the three of us, and we can't fight them, the six of us, and we can't fight them individually as our own entities, but we can join organizations that are working for justice. And different organizations can have different connections to chapters on the continent, as well as chapters in other part of the world. And we can start to continue figuring out ways to really affect them to where change is going to take place. But it's going to take more people who are organizing and who are aware of all of the political education that they lack, so that they can find a way to replenish that. You're not going to be able to make a difference if you don't understand all that has happened, if you don't understand what France has been up to for the last 500 years, if you don't understand what the Sahel region even is, if you don't even know 9 countries in Africa that happen to be in the Sahel region, then you're not going to be able to make a difference. So all of this comes with increasing political education. All of that comes with joining an organization that is working for justice. They go hand in hand. You need to join an organization that's working for justice and increase your political education, so that you can be the warrior that we need you to be. Because this makes no sense for our people to be living in these kind of conditions. It does not make sense that the Eiffel Tower should stay lit up for 24 hours straight. Meanwhile, people in Niger do not have access to the same electricity they're providing to Europe. That's despicable, and it makes me so angry. That is despicable. But yet these things happen all the time, because Africa is not respected, and neither are the people that come from it. But we can change that. And it starts by joining an organization that's working for justice and increasing political education. We say that every day, but I truly, truly hope that you will start to consider the imperativeness of that, especially as the year is coming to an end, because that's something that like needs to be a lifelong thing that you start to decide you're going to do, because it's not going to happen overnight, and there's no special time of year where you should join an organization. You just have to jump in and experience it. And if it works for you, great. But if that particular organization doesn't flow with you, then try another one. But don't give up, because our people need you, and your people need you if you're not African. This is for anyone who's not in an organization that's working for justice. So with that, I will pass it back to my dad. Please don't forget to support our comrades who are raising money in Burkina Faso. I just mentioned Burkina being one of the countries that is impacted by France's decision to put them under a French-controlled bank. But yet our comrades are still working hard, despite everything that France is doing, to try to raise money for our younger African comrades, so that they can do what? Increase their political education. They are working very hard to help these Africans understand who they are to understand why the Sahel region is fighting back and also under attack, and helping them to understand more about why it is a beautiful and empowering thing to be African. So don't forget to visit www.patreon.com/Burkina Books so that our Africans can have some information that is reliable and that is credible, because increasing their political education is making them more groomed and manicured to join an organization that's working for justice. Ashe.
Ashe, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I'm just going to continue quickly by just asking you all this. How many of you have heard, or maybe you even believe, this statement? People sure do talk a lot, but nobody's doing anything. So if you've heard that statement, and you know people that make that statement, or you believe it yourself, then we have got something for you. What we are talking about here, this URL you see on the screen, if you don't see it, it's www.patreon.com/Burkina Books. And what this is a project started by the All African People's Revolutionary Party organizers in Burkina Faso. And what they are doing is doing on-the-ground work to organize schools, revolutionary ideological training ground schools, not just book clubs, but real education to replace colonial education. And they have a youth brigade. They're doing phenomenal work in Burkina Faso. And so what we are asking is for people to sponsor that work by becoming a sponsor through the URL on the screen. Now, we've done a lot of fundraisers for our work on the ground in Africa. And this one should be as exciting to people as anything, but for some reason it hasn't been as successful as the ones we've done before. And so I'm thinking, people are weird. I don't know. But what I've done and what we'll do going forward is we've added, you can either become a monthly sponsor to Patreon and Burkina Books, or you can go to abetterworld.me and just donate whatever you can donate. That way, people are anonymous, and for some reason that makes people feel secure. I guess it's a false sense of security, but whatever it takes to raise money for our revolutionary Pan-African work, that's what we want to do. So whatever makes you comfortable, if you can become a monthly sponsor, please do that. You can go on there. If you just click on the URL, you can become a sponsor for as low as $5 a month. You can contribute whatever you want. So nobody is going to be able to convince me that they can't find $5 that's listening to this. Like, if you really are serious about being tired of talk and wanting action, then what we're saying is that the work that we do is about funding on the ground action to free our homeland, because this is the kind of work that needs to take place. So you can do that. You can be a monthly sponsor, or you can just donate to abetterworld.me, and 100% of what you donate will go directly to the organizers on the ground in Burkina Faso. Please do one, at least. There's no choice. We don't have a choice to not do either. Please do one, at least one. Do both, but at least one, make a contribution, right? And in the coming weeks, we'll get the actual Venmo to Burkina Faso, and you can send money directly to them. You don't like us, you don't trust us, that's fine. I'm not offended by that at all. We are trying to do revolutionary work. We don't have time to worry about people's egos and who doesn't like me. I want a lot of you not to like me. That means I'm doing good work. So that's okay. Not at all offended by that. We just want to get this work off the ground and going. So let's continue with the topic and talk about France's stranglehold on Africa. And as Shakur mentioned, the CFA franc, the currency. But first, I'm sorry, I just want to dial back, because I know that probably most people, when you say the Sahel region of Africa, they don't really know what you're talking about. So let's talk about that. The Sahel region of Africa, if you look at a map of Africa and you start on the west coast of Africa, where the country of Senegal is, you start with Senegal and you just go on a line to the right, east, on the map of Africa. What you'll see Senegal, and then you'll see Mali, then Burkina Faso, and then next to just east of Burkina Faso, you'll see both Chad and Nigeria. And then it continues on all the way to Ethiopia on the east coast of Africa. This line of countries I just mentioned is below the Sahara Desert and right above Central Africa. So that region I just described to you, that's below Sahara Desert and right above Central Africa, is called the Sahel region. And most of these countries are colonized by France. Senegal, Mali, Burkina Faso, Benin, which is in there, Chad, all of these, Niger is there as well. I think I forgot to mention them in the brief geography I gave, but they're right there. Look at a map, you'll see it. So that's why, this happened after the Berlin Conference in 1884. France got these territories, and that's why they're geographically placed the way they are. But this is where the struggle is being raised. And the 9 countries Sakura mentioned, all of them were not countries that were colonized by France. Like Burkina Faso was colonized by the Portuguese. Nigeria was colonized by the British. But because of the political alignments in Africa today, it ended up as it has, the power dynamics. And so those countries like Guinea-Bissau, where I was at just a few short months ago, they used the CFA franc. They used this French-controlled currency. And so the reason why we're talking about the CFA franc is that it was, not only was it arranged so that the countries that we've mentioned couldn't even exchange it between each other, but also it was set up at a fixed exchange rate with the euro. And that fixed exchange rate was guaranteed in the European community by France. So what this means, you all, is that France established itself in the euro. And there are certain currencies that have clout anywhere they're used on the planet Earth. And most of the currencies on Earth have no clout. You can't use them outside of the countries in which they operate, right? For example, if you go to Senegal, the currency is the CFA, as you know, if you've been paying attention today. And if you go to the border of Senegal and Gambia, and I've done that, and you go into Gambia from Senegal, the currency in Gambia is the Dalasi. The Dalasi is useless in Senegal, and the CFA franc in Senegal is useless in Gambia. Even though you can see Gambia from Senegal, and you can see Senegal from Gambia across the Gambian River. So this situation we're talking about. These currencies are virtually worthless outside of a limited geographical area, whereas world currencies like the European euro, the British pound, the French franc, the Canadian dollar, the US dollar, the Israeli Zionist currency, these currencies are backed by the power of these countries, so they have clout around the world. So when France says, well, we guarantee the CFA franc in these African countries, that it'll have the same exchange rate as the euro, you might say, well, then that's good for these countries using the CFA franc. No, it isn't. Because what it means, and the reason why France does this, is to extort all of these African countries to agree to France's economic extortion that they have engaged in for decades against all of these African countries using the CFA franc, these 9 countries using it. What am I talking about? So the French government guarantees the fixed rate of the CFA franc with the euro. And so this way, they ensure that investments, trade, these things happen with these 9 African countries. The 9 African countries depend on that to finance their economy, to be able to do the things that you need to do in an economy, to run a military, to run a government. They depend upon that. Even though they're neo-colonial, they need that in order for them to function on the neo-colonial level that they function on. So without that guarantee, they wouldn't be able to do that. So this is how France extorts them to continue to use the CFA franc. It's not like it does anything to create any autonomy or any independence for any of these African countries. It just allows them to function as slaves of France. And that's the whole reason why France does it, right? So they control this process by setting up these central banks in Africa. the Central Bank of West Africa, and then also the Bank of West Africa. You can see if you're looking at the screen on the currency that's on the screen that it says, you know, Bank Central of Africa, the Central Bank of Africa. And so they dominate these 9 economies by forcing them to launder all of, you know, their resources through these banks. And the way they do that is these banks have systemically held 50% of all of the assets deposited from all of the gross domestic product of these 9 countries. So France controls 50% of all of the assets produced by these 9 countries that we mentioned. And this is the extortion that France uses. In other words, if you don't do that, you don't get this fixed exchange rate on the international market. If you don't get that, then nobody's going to want to trade with you for sugar. Nobody's going to trade with you for cocoa, for anything that you need to have a society. And if you can't get those things, the people are going to rebel and uprise, and you're not going to be there very long. So it's extortion on all levels. It's extortion against the neo-colonial regimes. It's certainly extortion against the masses of people in these Sahel countries, because they're forced to live on a very limited manifestation of the assets that they produce. And this keeps them tied to this slavery mechanism. If you want an example of that, it's no different than how these crackers here in this United States of America, in the southern portion of this country, after the Emancipation Proclamation, forced our people to stay on the plantation by terrorizing them, making it very difficult for them to leave the plantation, and then forcing them like, well, you can stay here and work, but if you do that, we're gonna charge you for the equipment now, because you're not working for us anymore. You're working for yourselves. We're gonna charge you for everything, where you live, everything. And the sharecroppers started off after the Emancipation Proclamation in debt, and they were charged exorbitant interest rates, and they were never able to come out of that debt. And there are families today in Mississippi that are still in debt for over 150 years by this nonsense. Well, that's the same thing that France is doing in the Sahel region of Africa. It's the same thing that Britain does. The same thing that all of these colonizing crooks, criminals, and cracker nations do to Africa. And so this is what we are trying to get folks to see and understand, because these types of gangster tactics are the reason why African people are poor and suffering all over the planet Earth. It's not because we're lazy. It's not because we don't work hard enough. It's not because we don't have the right belief in God. That's all a bunch of damn bullshit. It's because of these institutional systems of oppression that most of us know nothing about, but operate very effectively on a day-to-day basis to keep our people enslaved to these criminal empires, right? So what's happening in the Sahel right now is the masses of African people, and again, we have the URL for our comrades in Burkina Faso, or donate anonymously if you want to betterworld.me, but do something. As Apprentice Bunchy Carter, our wonderful ancestor from the Black Panther Party in LA, said, do something, Black people, even if you just spit. And that's exactly what we're saying about this. Do something. Do something to support your people. Support one way or the other. But we're saying the masses in the Sahel have risen up, sick of this oppression. They've risen up. And if you've been paying attention, there have been coups d'etats, right? Military coups d'etats in Mali, in Burkina Faso, in Niger. And we're not here saying that the military coups on their own are the solution, but we are wanting you to recognize that the military coups happened because the masses are fed up. And if the people in the military conditions or positions rather aren't able to engage in policy that will bring about the type of freedom from this neo-colonialism that France is perpetuating, then the masses at some point are going to be organized to overthrow them. And so this is what we have to watch and see. But the fact is, the masses are rising up saying, enough, we're tired of France. France, get the hell out. And that's a positive thing. So the coups in the countries should be seen for what they are. They're expressions of the African masses rising up and being tired of this exploitation. Now, we've been telling you, as long as we've been doing this program now, which is 3 years, going on 4 years, we've been telling you that Africa is on fire. And you don't believe it because the capitalist man, the capitalist cracker on TV, he's not talking about it. And if he's not talking about it, it doesn't exist for too many of us. The only thing that exists is what that cracker is telling us about. So you don't believe it, but the reality is that what's happening in the Sahel right now is an expression of what we've been saying the whole time. Africa is on fire, and the masses of people are getting clarity on what's going on and saying no more of this nonsense, and are not going to be fooled by symbols of progress anymore, and are going to demand real examples of progress. And if they don't get it, then that will just put us in the position where revolutionary change is that much more likely. And that is something that we live for. So for genuine revolutionary Pan-Africanists, we see these developments as further evidence of our claim that until Africa is free, no African anywhere on earth will be free, because this neo-colonial system of oppression that exists in Africa is a manifestation of the balkanization of Africa, or the splitting up of Africa, and the control of Africa by the forces of capitalism and international imperialism. And the solution to that is that we have to unify in Africa. And this is happening, if you're paying attention to what's happening in the Sahel. The people of Burkina Faso are linking up with the people of Mali. The people of Mali are linking up with the people in Guinea, with Senegal, in Niger, in Chad. All of this is happening as we speak. And the AAPRP is on the ground doing everything we can to help facilitate those link-ups. We have a chapter in Burkina Faso. We have organizers in Senegal. We have a relationship, a sibling relationship with the Democratic Party of Guinea. These are countries in the Sahel region. So we are talking about something we know is happening through the work that is being engaged in every day. And we are going to do everything we can to put oil on that fire. Because the more we link up and the more we unify and the more we build revolutionary Pan-Africanist structures, get people in these organizations, get political education as a priority, start doing work to dismantle neo-colonialism, then this will move us in the direction that Kwame Nkrumah talked to us about, where we have one unified socialist Africa and we can be through with this nonsense once and for all. And so as the African masses bring light to France and what they're doing, and bring light to what Britain's doing, and what the United Snakes is doing, and all the criminality that all of these backward cracker nations are doing in Africa, then we have some homework that we have to engage in here in the West. And everywhere we are outside of Africa, we have homework that we have to be willing to engage in while all of this is happening. So the question is, well, what can I do? How can I impact this? I'm all the way over here and not giving a damn USA. What can I do to contribute to this? How can I wake people up? How can I make any type of contribution to this? These people won't even, if it's not on how to marry a millionaire, they don't want to hear nothing about it. If it's not who's fighting to get to the Super Bowl, they don't want to hear nothing about it. If it's not will LeBron James play with his son Bronny in the NBA, they don't want to hear nothing about it. Well, here's what we can do to challenge that. Because yes, there are a lot of people that's all they're interested in, but there are also a lot of people who will be willing to hear a message that can inspire them to do more than that. We always have to remember that Nina Simone was engaged in work that certainly would not be characterized as revolutionary before she gained her consciousness. We all know the story of El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, Malcolm X. We know that he was engaged in criminal activity before his political awakening. We know that Ernesto Che Guevara and the enemies of humanity do everything they can to remind us that he was not a conscious person before he engaged in his awakening and became a worldwide revolutionary. We know that Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale were planning to start an organization that was really, they were exploring the possibility of becoming pimps in West Oakland. And they were able to achieve a level of political consciousness that drove them away from that backward objective and to create the Black Panther Party for self-defense. So nobody is in a position to pass judgment against anybody. We have to have faith in the masses of our people. That's our responsibility. And our job is not to judge anybody. It's to provide the information to spark the African Revolution. That's our job. So if you ask what you can do, there are several things you can do today that can make a serious contribution towards moving us forward. The first thing you can do is what's on the screen there. Become a monthly sponsor of Burkina Books. Click on the URL. Donate $5 a month. Donate $10 a month. Donate $15, $20, whatever you can afford. We're not telling you how much. We're just telling you got to do it. Well, I don't want to do that because I don't want them to know who I am. That's why we have the other link up there, abetterworld.me. Please donate there. You can donate anonymously, however much you want. You can donate $1,000. Nobody has to know. And 100% of that $1,000 is going to our comrades on the ground in Burkina Faso. It's not staying here. It's not going to Shakura. It's not going to me. It's not going to the APRP work in the US. It's not going, we don't need to fleece you for money like that. All you got to do is look at our history. We have a history of providing political resources and continued resources to the masses of African people and all kinds of other people. Nobody can refute that. Nobody can even just take me as an individual and refute that. My history is full of doing work for all kinds of people in the name of peace and justice without asking for a dime. So that's not even in question. Anybody that raises that, you got to ask them where's the evidence, because they will not be able to produce anything. But we can produce all kind of evidence of our work and what we're doing and how we don't have any compensation. We come out of pocket. We go in the hole to do, because that's what revolutionaries do. So make a commitment, please, today to be a contributor to our work on the ground in Burkina Faso. Another thing that absolutely needs to happen, besides that, is supporting genuine revolutionary work. We've talked about the Thomas Sankara Center for Liberation and Pan-African Unity in Burkina Faso, the APRP project. Please support that. But there are other things you can do. The critically important one is you have to join an organization working for our people and/or working for justice. You have to do that. Too many people are like sponges, sit up and want to get all the information and don't want to do a damn thing to lift a finger to make a contribution. If that's you, you're part of the problem. And it's not, we're not going for that BS of, well, I'm just trying to get information right now. You will never understand this. I'm telling you this right now. You will never understand this work sitting on the sidelines just listening to other people talk about it. You will never understand it. That's like saying, well, I can understand how to deliver a baby just by listening to people who have delivered babies talk about it. You will never understand it until you become a part of it. You will never understand how to drive a vehicle just listening to people talk about driving. You will never understand how to be a tennis player just listening to people talk about tennis. You will only understand those things when you participate and practice, and quantity makes quality, and you become better. The more you do it, the better at it you get. You will only understand our struggle for justice when you become engaged in it. That's the only way you understand it. And if you are not willing to become engaged in it, then shut the hell up talking about it, because all you're doing is spreading confusion and making it so much harder for those of us who are genuinely trying to do the work to do it, because you're spreading confusion based on the dysfunctional nonsense that's in your head that's based on no experience actually doing the work. So that all you have to do, we're not saying you have to come in today and be Huey P. Newton and Kwame Nkrumah and Assata Shakur and Amy Jock Garvey. You couldn't do that if you wanted to. I couldn't do that if I wanted to. There's only one Huey P. Newton and Kwame Nkrumah and Assata Shakur and Amy Jock Garvey. We're not asking anybody to do that. We're asking you to make the contribution that you were put on earth to make. And so you have to join an organization working for our people. We have the All African People's Revolutionary Party here. If you're an African, you got to join us. You got to say, I'm going to make a commitment. I'm going to step out of my comfort zone and I'm going to make a commitment. And for the first 6 months, all we ask you to do is participate in work study. You need to study. You know, we don't know all of these things that we're talking about. So you need to study. That's all we ask you to do for 6 months. We don't ask you to do anything else. You can do everything, but we don't ask you to do that. That's up to you. All we ask you to do is study for 6 months. You're not an African. Well, they won't even let me join the APRP, so I guess I can't do nothing. No, that's a damn lie. You're just making excuses for why you're not going to do anything. You can do everything. And we've said it a million times, and we'll say it a million more times. If you're not African, we will help you. We have organizations we work with. If you're indigenous or Latino, you can join the Ilahe Spirit Runners. You can join the American Indian Movement. You can join El Partido de Raza Unida. We have relationships with all of those organizations, and we're happy to direct you to the people engaged in them so that you can start doing work. And if you don't, if you don't like those organizations, or you're African and you don't like the APRP, then there are other organizations we can direct you to. And if you don't like any of the organizations in existence, you still don't get to escape. You got to start the damn I hate this goddamn person talking on this show organization. And say tonight, I'm gonna start the I hate this goddamn person talking organization. And guess what? We will help you with your work to start the I hate this goddamn person talking organization. We will help you build a political education program in the I hate this goddamn person talking organization so that you can build capacity to contribute to this struggle for justice and human progress. You cannot escape. You've got to do it. If you have all the excuses in the world for why you're not doing something, only person you're fooling is yourself. Those of us who are doing this work, you're not fooling us. You just lazy, you're cowardly, or I don't know what your problem is, but you got to do something to make a contribution. That's your responsibility as a human being. So let's do it. You decide what that is. We're not going to tell you what that looks like. You have to do that. But you've got to make a contribution today. Think of it like this. Even if all of us, think of everyone you know. You can think of 20 people you know. Think about what they're doing. I bet you if you know 20 people, not more than one or two of them are engaged in a struggle for justice. And by that, I mean participating in organizing work. We're not talking about somebody just running their damn mouth. That's not you contributing to the struggle for justice. I know you think it is. I know you want it to be, but that's not what that is, because it's not consistent. It's not organized. It's just whatever's in your head coming out whenever it comes out. That is not going to get us where we need to be to have the type of liberatory capacity that we need to be free. That is not going to do that. So we're not talking about just people running their mouth. We're talking about people who are engaged in efforts to build capacity. 2 or more people. Doesn't matter how they're structured. 2 or more people with a common objective is an organization. That's what we're talking about. That's the definition. That's the only definition. So if you know that and you have that, then we're saying you've got to contribute to that. You decide how that is. But if you take those 20 people, if no more than 1 or 2 of them are engaged in the work I just got through talking about, the other 18 or 19 people are just engaged in going to their slave every day, making money to pay the bills, buying a car, eating ribs and pork chops, and maybe going to church or something like that, listening to Reverend Chickenfoot every Sunday. And that's what their lives are, raising their kids. And that's it. And that's all they're interested in doing. We are never going to be free like that. That's a life of servitude and slavery. The only way we're going to be free is we got to get more people engaged in this. So think about it like this. If we had, of those 20 people, instead of 1 or 2, and that's optimistic, being engaged in a struggle, what if we had at least 8 or 9 of those 20 people engaged in organizing work? Anyone hearing that, you cannot refute the fact that that would improve our capacity to move forward as a people and as peace and justice loving citizens of humanity. It would move us in a much better position to do that if we had 8 or 9 people who were doing that. Even if 8 or 9 of those people were just supporting the work, like doing work like supporting the work in Burkina Faso, raising money, and that's all they did. So that those of us who are doing the political work don't have to do that. They were just doing that. They're not even in the organization, they're doing that. That would be we would be at a much higher level than we are right now. There's absolutely no question about that. So this is why we constantly talk about organization. And then this is how we support genuine efforts to fight for Pan-Africanism, indigenous people's rights, and all peace and justice aimed activities and organizations. We are not set tripping. We don't care what you do. You come to us, you say, well, I think the solution is electing the Democrats in office. We 100% disagree, but we are not going to criticize you and try to derail you from doing that if that's what you're convinced to do. We don't. That's a waste of time to us. What we will tell you is you should build a movement to support that, because all you have right now is voting for a bunch of crackers and wannabe crackers and nothing to hold them accountable once they get elected. You have to have a movement to do that. So that's the only thing we would tell you about that. But other than that, we're not going to sit there and argue. We got better things to do. You don't have any example where we're sitting there arguing with people about what they're doing to make a contribution to our struggle. You got us confused with some other organization. We don't do that. We are saying everybody has to make a contribution. And we know that if you say electoral politics and you're organizing the movement, which is what you should be doing, that's gonna force you to have to engage in this type of organizational work that we're talking about. We know what we're doing when we say what needs to be done. So we encourage you to do that. All of these things that we're talking about here, there is not a single person hearing this that can't do any of these things today. There's no reason you don't have to be a millionaire to do it. You don't have to have your life together. In fact, if you get involved in an organization, that's the best way to get your life together. The problem you have now, the reason why you can't get yourself together is because you're trying to organize your life in your head, and your head is disorganized. You don't have any accountability, and your head is preventing you from having that because it doesn't want you to be organized because it's easier, and you want the easiest route in life. You join an organization, now you have an accountability to something greater than yourself that's going to force you to have to organize your life. And that will make your life so much easier. The U.S. military says, oh, we do more before 9 a.m. Bullshit. We revolutionaries do more before 7 a.m. than you do the whole day. I guarantee you, come spend the day with me. You're welcome to do that. And I'll show you that in a way that's irrefutable. And that comes through organization of your life. And that's what organization does for your life. So everybody can do all of these things right now. This is the best way to support the African masses in Sahel, the African masses all over Africa, the African masses all over the African world, worldwide. It's the best way to support the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. It's the best way to support the Palestinian people. It's the best way to support the Irish people. It's the best way to support poor working class white people all over the world. It's the best way to support all of humanity that's on the side of justice. And if you're not doing that, then you are standing on the side of the enemies of humanity, whether you mean to or not. Don't be that person. Get on the right side of history. Get on the right side of history. So we thank you for joining us today. And we invite you back next week, same time, same place, where we talk about the U.S. lie called Veterans Day. We get it. The capitalist system has its institutions to justify its existence. But we have our institutions, which are revolutionary and designed to dismantle their backward systems of oppression. So we're not afraid to address these things. Yeah, we get threats for talking about it. We get all kind of threats. We get all kind of threats for talking about it. And we tell the people, you know, we're gonna, okay, well, you can tune in, you want to see us talk about it, you're gonna do all this to us, come and do it. You know, come and make your effort. Because we would, as James Brown said in the song Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, we people, we like the birds and the bees, but we rather die on our feet than live on our knees. And these crackers know this. They know this about those of us that are serious. That's why we don't have problems. They can make all the threats they want. But if they come to the right people, they'll get the right response. That's why they don't come to us. They come to a lot of you out there. Oh, please, 911, they're coming after me. I'm so scared. They love that. They depend on that. They ain't gonna come to us because we ain't calling no damn 911. We're ending their misery for them. So join us next week when we talk about that. Go to the APRP Forward Ever shop, buy some clothes like this one I have on right now. That's Advancing Revolutionary African Consciousness and Political Education. Join the All African People's Revolutionary Party, aprp-intl.org. Go to abetterworld.me. All of these presentations are there. You can get them and forward them. Please do that. hoodcommunist.org. Every Thursday, there are new revolutionary articles out. We've talked about the Thomas Sankara Center for Liberation and Pan-African Unity in Burkina Faso. The QR code is on the screen there. The URL is there. You can go to betterworld.me, which is also there, and make a donation. And whatever money comes in there, I'm sending 100% of it to Burkina Faso. So don't even worry about that. That's definitely going to happen. We have all the other APRP programs there on the screen. We want to invite you a very important event we are having this Wednesday, November 1st, here in Sacramento, but it's going to be live streamed as well. We're starting the Don't Let School Interfere with Your Education workshop series. The title is Israel, Palestinians, and Africa Explained. Israel, Palestinians, and Africa Explained. Wednesday, November 1st, from 6 to 8 p.m. at the California State University Sacramento campus, 6000 J Street here in Sacramento, Sequoia Building, room 128. Come on out. We're going to have food served. You don't have any excuse. You can get off your slave and come, and we'll have food for you to eat. And we're going to talk to you about the difference between Judaism and Zionism. But mostly, we're going to talk about the extent to which Zionist Israel exploits African human and material resources to finance its existence. So come on out. It'll be live streamed if you don't live in Sacramento. If you live in Sacramento, there's no damn reason you can't just come. And my book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. Tell people about it. Buy it. 100% of the proceeds go to our fascist, anti-fascist work, which I'll talk about more in the coming weeks. We have a lot of that work happening. So support it. Forward ever, backwards never. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening. We are winning. Don't listen to these people trying to lie. We are winning. Get involved. Join an organization. Forward ever.